Assalamu alaikum. Good day, students. My name is Dr. Mubarak Isaulawa, and I'm here to take you GST 212, that is Philosophy, Logic, and Human Existence. As you may have seen already, that this module 3, which I'm to take you, is talking about branches and the problems of philosophy. Yeah, majority of the people think that the branches of philosophy and the problems of philosophy are two different things. However, most of the discourses that we're going to be talking about here, you'll find out that the two are almost the same. However, different philosophers have different way of looking at them from different dimensions, which when you come inside, you come to see. However, I have a beautiful diagram before us here, uh, which is talking about what we have here. That is, I'm speaking of this diagram whereby you see philosophy, branches of philosophy, as well as the schools of philosophical thought, while logic enjoying the centrality of what we have here, in that all the branches of philosophy as well as the school of philosophical thought, and whenever discussing about philosophy itself, we have to apply logic. That is why logic remains in between, because logic is neither a branch of philosophy, nor is it a school of philosophy, but a tool of doing philosophy. This is just the reason why we think that it's very important that we clarify this issue. And then secondly, when we're talking about the branches of philosophy from this module 3, you'll find out that what I intend to do for us is more or less like looking at generally the philosophy itself, logic, and of course human existence. Yes, it is me again. As you can see, this is my picture. If you want to know who I am, then you can have a look, and maybe we can, when we meet someday, you can know where we can maybe make ourselves as acquaintances. You know my office. You can go there for any discussion that you would want to do with regards to these branches and the problems of philosophy. Now, looking at the objectives of this module, that is module 3, our intention is by the end of this module that the students should be able to define philosophy, identify the problems of philosophy, mention the branches of philosophy, and relate the problems to religion. Of course, the reason why we bring religion here, that is what the CC Mass is actually requiring of us. That is, I'm talking about the core curriculum minimum academic standards, that is the CC Mass. Then we also want to discuss philosophy in relation to human conduct, values, and character formation. As a way of a general introduction to the course, logic, philosophy, and human existence, we found out that uh, this course seeks to navigate students through the philosophical debates about philosophy and human existence, which is evident in the major argument of the classical schools of thought, maintaining that essence precedes existence, to mean that humanity itself started as a product of an idea conceived by the universal mind. When we're talking about the universal mind here, we're talking about God, of course. Everyone knows that before Adam was created, there was this discussion between God and the angels. The angels were kind of asking God, why should he bring some kind of people that are going to shed blood and going to cause mischief? When he said, Inni ja'ilun fil ardi khalifa, when he said this in the Holy Quran, you can look through that. Even in the Bible, when you look at the Genesis, I think the creation of Adam is also there. But however, we're going to look at it from the Quranic version here because the two are not contradicting each other. So you can remember that human existence, when they say essence precedes existence here, is simply more or less uh, discussing the issue of this is to mean that human existence started from an idea conceived by God when He was talking to the angels about creating a vicegerent on earth. That is when you look at Quran 2, that is chapter 2 of the Holy Quran, verse 30 to 33. This version this version was kind of challenged by yet another modern philosophical thinking of the existential philosophers who reversed the argument saying that no existence precedes essence, asserting that man must first exist before we think about ideas that he conceives. Before I go further, you should understand that this essence precedes existence. We're talking about human existence here, that we ourselves are a product of Allah's creation. If God had not actually conceived of kind of creating us as human beings or as his servants, there is no way we would have been where we are today. So that is why you will find out that in most of what we are doing, uh, everything that you can think about essence precedes existence. You have to have an idea first before anything comes to be, even not those human beings. Not only Adam, you can think about anything that can come to your mind. It must first start by an idea, or what they call the universals. The universals, which is one of the problems of philosophy we shall come to discuss presently. But then, this is talking about forms, or theory of forms of Plato and idealism. But what we're looking at here is more or less like talking about how we first of all come to be in this basic argument of essence precedes existence of idealism, and then no being reversed by another school of philosophical thought, that is existentialism, which says that no existence precedes essence. This we are talking about people like Soren Kierkegaard, Jean-Paul Sartre, Gabriel Marcel, Albert Albert Camus. Most of all these philosophers were actually existential philosophers, and they said so much about this philosophy of human existence. Then, when we now look at in the events of going through this, in the event of going through this course will also navigate the students into these debates by clarifying the meanings, nature, scope, and problems of philosophy. Logic, being a tool of doing philosophy, will be given attention for the students to be equipped with the necessary skills to enter into these debates by making meaningful contributions to the debate and also shaping their lives through critical thinking and understanding of the rules of inference and coherence in the presentation of their arguments. Secondly, we found out that the problems of philosophy also revolve around the three major branches of philosophy, that is speaking of metaphysics, epistemology, that is reality, knowledge, and then axiology, which is values. However, Bertrand Russell, on the other hand, in his book, discussed these problems of philosophy, whereby he talked about reality and appearance. That is how we look at what is real and what is actually uh, in what we can see. And then we now discuss the issues of existence and the nature of matter. This matter, what is real, what you can touch, see, hear, or what has this body or weight, or mass rather, and weight. And then we talk about the issues of idealism, that is the argument of essence precedes existence will come in here. Then kinds of knowledge, I'm still speaking of a priori and a posteriori knowledge. Then the issues of induction. We're talking about induction here, we're talking about how people think, how people bring ideas into what we see today, which is different from deduction. When we think about particular experiences and then we take them to the general experience, that's what we're talking about induction here. And then on the issues of universals, Bertrand Russell was also very keen about the issues of the universals. When he says something is a universal issue, or the universals here are more or less discussing generalities, or talking about things that are applied everywhere, that everywhere they mean the same, such as the mortality of man himself and his own mortality, that everyone is actually or not oblivious of the fact that we all die, will definitely die one day, and that we have not seen any man exceeding a particular age, and that everyone must actually surely come to live this world. This is exactly what we're talking about when we're discussing these issues of universals. And as a way of introduction to philosophy and its problems, we should know that the search for meanings in life is primarily conducted by religion, of course, science and philosophy, while the religions, upon belief in the supreme God, seek for meanings through his signs and creations, as well as prayers and contemplation, by living a good life as a preparation for the hereafter. However, science, on the other hand, mainly seeks for the knowledge of facts, their interpretation using what is called the objective scientific methods of observation, experimentation, and description, as A.S. Thakur would actually argue in one of his books in Pete Salvin. Philosophy, on the other hand, as defined by Saulawa in 2014, is that it is the art of making critical clarifications and reading between the lines in order to illuminate or cast light into the darkness of ignorance, so as to come up with rational answers to the questions of reality, knowledge, and values. On the other hand, C.D. Broad, or Charlie Dunbar Broad, as was cited in Akinpelu, that is in one of his locus classicals, that is an introduction to the philosophy of education in 1981, posited that the object of speculative philosophy is to take over the results from the various sciences, add to them ethical and religious experiences of mankind, and then to reflect upon the whole. This, as well as we can see, is what is making us to have an understanding of what is actually what the problems of philosophy are looking at here. That philosophical researches have a way of making us understand our own problems or life in general. Speaking of metaphysics, metaphysics, as we can see, is sometimes referred to as the first philosophy in one of the works of Aristotle, given such name because it is mostly one of the areas that we like to discuss before we think about anything. Uh, as we can see, metaphysics simply means meta is a fusion of two Greek words in that we have meta and physica. Meta simply means beyond or above something, while physica, on the other hand, is looking at what we call the physical realm. That is what we can see, hear, or touch. That is what we can observe with our own human senses. That is why metaphysics, in other words, is a branch of philosophy that deals with pure abstractions that are considered to be in existence but cannot be perceived by the human senses. However, this, for example, we can discuss things like the human soul, the mind, the spirits or the jinns, if you like, the angels, as well as God. This is a kind of an area that we would want to actually explore when we're dealing with our reality here. And then we have subdivisions of metaphysics, which could be on ontology, cosmology, and theology. Under this, we kind of talk about ont and logos, that is being, a study of the nature of beings. You see, but the first three here shall be actually considered. That is talking about theology would add discussion on anything about theodicy. Uh, to begin with, ontology, we say it is study of the nature of being, the nature of man, his psyche, and predispositions. While ontology simply deals with the creator and his creation, you should understand here that when we're talking about the creator, we're talking about God here and all that he has created, speaking of the seven heavens and earth, and even the human beings as well as all other creatures, to begin with the angels, the jinns, and whatever you can think about that is existing. So this is speaking of the super being. So I can recall that is this issue of the ontological argument given by Rene Descartes when he was trying to kind of explain the existence of God. When you look at cosmology, this is cosmos and logos. Cosmos and logos here, that is, cosmos means the universe. Logos, study of the nature of something, and as such, cosmology here means the science of material universe, which studies the nature of the cosmos and their first causes. And in this model, we shall philosophically view it from the angle of their source of control using reason and theology. What we're trying to say here is that when you look at the cosmos, look at the universe, the solar system, you see how perfect it is, how perfect they are. You think about the Big Bang, how God has talked about the Big Bang. This is why we discuss religion and metaphysics, of course. You can say that the way God has created, or let me say, has made the Big Bang to happen, is there in Surah Al-Anbiya, where what God was saying was, أَفَلَمْ يَرَ الَّذِينَ كَفَرُوا أَنَّ السَّمَاوَاتِ وَالْأَرْضَ كَانَتَا رَتْقًا فَفَتَقْنَاهُمَا. That have the unbelievers not seen that these seven heavens and earth were once compacted in one particular area, but God made them to shatter, and this is where we have the Big Bang. So the Big Bang is there in the Quran and Surah Al-Anbiya. I think that should be Surah number 21. Surah number 21 of the Holy Quran. That is where you find these issues of the Big Bang. And then when you look at theology, directly when you look at theology here, on the other hand, we're dealing with theos and logos. Theos simply means God here. Theos. So study of the nature of God, but in this area, our discussion actually is on the nature of God, or let me say the religions rather. And as we can see that this theology is an offshoot of ontology, of course, dealing with creator and the creation. Uh, that is the being, the super being, and the other created beings. And this is what the Arabics would call Khaliq wal Makhluq. Khaliq wal Makhluq. That is the creator and the creation. So this has been an offshoot of ontology, but it's standing on its own, because theology here studies religion as the relation with the divine, while we look at what we talk about the polytheistic as well as the monotheistic religions. The monotheistic religions here stand for the Abrahamic religions, also called the Abrahamic religions because they believe in mono, that is one God. Uh, these religions could be what we call like the Judaism, religion of the Jews. We also have Christianity and as well as Islam. These are the three monotheistic religions we have. And when we talk about polytheistic, these are the Eastern religions. The Eastern religions, in most cases, here discuss things like when we talk about Hinduism, Buddhism, Zoroastrianism, all this Confucianism, most of these religions, even the traditional African traditional religions too, they were polytheistic because they believe in many gods. That is the poly, many gods, and still how they connect with actually the main creator. What really matters here is for us to see how we can understand the relationship here between the creator and his creation. Different people have different ways of connecting with the divine, and this is their own way of connecting with the divine, of course. And then now when we look at yes, speaking of epistemology, this is yet another area of philosophy that is one of the branches as well as one of the problems of philosophy that have to do with the theory of knowledge. The theory of knowledge, in that when you discuss things like epistemology here, anything that has to do with the validity, nature, and existence of knowledge here is all that we intend to discuss. To begin with, the etymology or the origin of the word epistem, which is another Greek word, and then logos, the study of the nature of knowledge. So therefore, the intention here is for us to look at the kinds of knowledge as well as the types of knowledge or sources of knowledge. Usually, the sources actually have a way of finding themselves in one of the two kinds of knowledge. But then, before we touch anything about that, we talk about this knowledge how and knowledge that. Knowledge how, as we must have been hearing about it, that is technical knowledge that we obtain from undergoing through some training, going through some programs for a particular period of time. We learn something, we learn how to walk, we learn how to we learn how to swim, we learn how to drive, how to cook. These are technical ways or technical knowledge or whatever that you can think about. Uh, when you say, I know how to do this, I know how to do that, the first question that people ask is, can you prove that? Or can you actually demonstrate that you can do what you claim to do? So our knowledge claims are in most of the times when we talk about knowledge how of the category, uh, they end up with asking people to back up their own claims with proof. However, knowledge that, on the other hand, we analyze this knowledge in form of some information, the information that we receive from friends, the information we receive from the media or facts. All these facts and whatever you can think about also give us this type of knowledge that is just like a position of some information, but it's very important as well. Yes, this one too, people can ask you, where did you get your source of information about whatever you can think about? So it's also equally important as much as the knowledge how. But this one is not actually uh, requiring some training or some skill before you can acquire it. It's just a piece of information as well as some facts around. So that is knowledge that. Uh, Talking about the kinds of knowledge, we have knowledge a priori and knowledge a posteriori. A priori knowledge, as here, we normally talk about knowledge before or without experience, the knowledge that we obtain before or without experience. While on the other hand, we're talking about knowledge a posteriori, is the knowledge we gain from our senses or from our own experience. That is knowledge that we get through experience or after experience. So that is why the sources of knowledge that we have here, like the three of them, well, let me say like the six of them here, the six types of knowledge that we have when we look at this, they kind of show us something. Uh, we have reason, revelation, and intuition. Reason is the rational knowledge that we normally have through our sense of thinking as human beings. That is why we call rational animals. The reason, the way we kind of reflect, all these show that we as human beings have this kind of knowledge. While knowledge by revelation is, this is a knowledge a priori, while knowledge by revelation, on the other hand, is another category of knowledge a priori, talking about the knowledge we receive from the scriptures, the knowledge we receive from the holy texts, such as the Quran, the Bible, and the Torah. All these three sources of knowledge, as they come from the divine, we call them knowledge by revelation. While knowledge by intuition, on the other hand, here is looking at things that the kind of insightful knowledge that we obtain. It is neither knowledge by reason, nor is it knowledge by revelation, in that it is somewhere in between. You did not actually think it through to get the solution to a problem, nor did you receive any revelation from God. Nor were you even sleeping or you got something from your sleep. It is not from a dream. It usually happens while you are awake, and just suddenly you kind of have an idea coming through your head or coming through your mind that, why don't you try this, and you try and you get the solution to a problem. That is what we refer to as knowledge by intuition. And sometimes in Arabic we call this knowledge by ilham. Knowledge by ilham. It is not uh, knowledge by revelation, but ilham. uh, However, this all these three, the first three, constitute what we call the knowledge a priori, while knowledge by empirical knowledge, the sensory knowledge that we receive from our own senses, what we see, hear, or touch, or we smell, or we can kind of at the same time perceive. All these are knowledge that we get through the empirical, we call it the empirical knowledge, or from the through the sensory receptors that we have in our own human bodies. Uh, this is empirical knowledge. We call it knowledge by experience, or whatever you can call it. Then we have knowledge by an authority. These authorities we refer to as specialists. These are specialists that are specialists in the area, and when they come, they give us what they know due to their level of training, that is the years that they have taken in the training. So all these constitute what we call knowledge by authority. And authorities such as the specialists like the medical doctors, the academic doctors in their respective fields, like myself. You're learning about philosophy, logic, and human existence here because you're learning it from the source. You're learning it from a philosopher. So I, as as an authority here, you can class it as knowledge that you receive from me as a knowledge from an authority. And knowledge by acquaintance here is sometimes seen by the educationists as what we call entry behavior or previous knowledge. It is knowledge that you already have or baseline knowledge that you normally have when you are coming to learn new facts, new information, or new knowledge, or new skills. That knowledge that you already have within you that is going to assist you learning something new is what we call knowledge by acquaintance, or knowledge, or previous knowledge, or entry behavior. That is how you have that. And in some instances, this knowledge by acquaintance is simply talking about uh, what you read somewhere, or what sometimes they call the deja vu, kind of a way of talking about how we recall things when things are happening. So this is sometimes referred to as knowledge by acquaintance. Then let us move to the next. Uh, let us move to the next problem, or next branch of philosophy, which is speaking of axiology. So axiology, as you can see, is also quickly we can dichotomize it, or dissect it rather, if you want to. That is axios and logos. That is of like value, or something that has worth. So axiology is simply talking about the study of the nature of values. That is what we actually revere, or we like, or we kind of put preference on, or we kind of have respect for. These preferences that we can discuss is a question of values. In our own different societies, we have different ways of talking to people. We have different ways of greeting one another, respecting each other. It's talking about when we relate, or we interact with other human beings. All these talk about axiology. So the values here primarily refer to the sense of worth which we place on objects that we cherish, appreciate, want, desire, or need. So all these form what we call uh, the values that we can talk on, the nature of the values. However, axiology is so broad, as you can see. That is why we said that when we're discussing character, when we come here, we are going to kind of expand. We're going to expand when we talk about ethics, and when we talk about aesthetics, most especially the realms of value. While the categories of value here, when we're discussing the objective and subjective values, intrinsic and extrinsic values, moral and non-moral values, this is going to take us into understanding of how we value things in life. So that when we come to understand issues of arguments here in like the ethical theories, we can quickly have an understanding of what we're actually discussing. So looking at the realms of value, to start with the realms of value here, we can say that when we're discussing ethics, ethics here basically has two dimensions. Speaking of normative as well as applied ethics. Applied ethics here deals with the issues that directly relate to the people's lives, such as how do we live, or how should we live or die, uh, how should we relate with others, how do we kind of have a conducive relationship, a conducive atmosphere. How can we can create a conducive atmosphere between we ourselves and our fellow human beings that we live in the same community or society. So this deals with applied ethics. So that is what we're talking about here. How should we conduct ourselves? How do we kind of respect one another? This is a question of value that we're talking about. We're talking about character formation in the beginning of this module, talking about how we can understand the character we can form for our own respective individuals when we live in our own societies. So that is the kind of applied ethics we're talking about. While normative ethics, on the other hand, is talking about the moral standards that we put, or that we set as actions, as to what actions are right or wrong, and which are wrong in our own societies. What things should one value? Is life worth living? A typical example of normative ethics can be seen in the holy texts of especially the three monotheistic religions that are speaking of the Torah, the Bible, and the Quran, respectively, as they come. All these three scriptures, they set us moral standards in the people of in the Jews, the Christians, and the Muslims. We all have our own normative ethics or normative standards. Like in the Quran, we can see a lot of places, like in Surah al Isra, ولا تبذر تبذيرا ولا تمشي في الأرض مرحا ولا تقف ما ليس لك به علم. All those kind of commandments that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is telling us that we should not walk majestically on earth. ولا تقتلوا ولا تمشي في الأرض مرحا, that is talking about we shouldn't walk majestically on earth. ولا تبذر تبذيرا, and we should not be extravagant, we should not kind of waste things. All these come through the Quran. And inside the Bible, we have different commandments talking about thou shalt not kill, thou shalt not steal, thou shalt not do this, or thou shalt not do that. All those standards that God is telling us to take care of is what we are trying to discuss here in the monotheistic religions. We also have written and unwritten constitutions, ground rules in meetings, seminars, workshops, and even lectures. Found out that we have different ways of code of conduct. The way we have to kind of respect one another, we have some set rules that we can respect each other and also make the particular exercise, whatever we are doing, to be such an experience. So this is actually what we're discussing when we're talking about ethics here. Then aesthetics, on the other hand, here is the second area of the realms of values in axiology, which deals with feelings, creativity, appreciation, and creation, or rather of arts, and even innovations that you can think about. The beauty of things, such as music, artistry, drama, landscape, and even man himself as an aesthetic being. The beauty and perfections of the heavens and skies. Here, when we talk about beauties and perfections of the heavens and skies, what are we trying to kind of reflect here? If you look at it, what we're trying to do here, most especially, is to talk about when God Himself was kind of asking human beings that would they not reflect over how we create the heavens? He said, أَفَلَمْ يَرَوْا إِلَى الْأَرْضِ إِلَى السَّمَاءِ فَوْقَهُمْ أَفَلَمْ يَنْظُرُوا إِلَى السَّمَاءِ فَوْقَهُمْ فَكَيْفَ بَنَيْنَاهَا وَزَيَّنَّاهَا وَمَا لَهَا مِنْ فُرُوجٍ. Like in Surah I think Mulk, Surah Al-Mulk, if you see that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is kind of saying that we should look at how beautifully He has created the skies, and most especially that you don't find any kind of flaws in there. You don't see cracks in the skies. You don't see any mistake thereof. And as such, God is kind of showing the perfections of how He made these heavens and the skies. This is what we call the receptive side of uh, aesthetics. That is recognition and appreciation of creativeness. When we look at landscapes, when we see how beautifully a particular scenery looks like, and as such, we kind of see how we appreciate all those things. And this is sometimes referred to as aesthetic delight. This is Collinson, how Collinson tried to argue that in J.F. Doyle, that is talking about 1973, which was later republished in the year 2010. And yeah, speaking of categories of value, we have moral and non-moral values here from the first category. When we say a value is moral, it entails that we are dealing with interpersonal relationship between human beings. You find out that when you are relating with someone or you are relating with your fellow colleague in school or at place of work, you have to respect them. This is the place where we talk about issues that have to do with respect between human beings. Of course, they said respect is reciprocal. Do others what you would want others also do unto you. So that is an issue of morality here coming in. So you have to behave yourself, not just the way you can talk to yourself or to anyone, but the fact that we are dealing with interpersonal relationships, then you say that issue is moral. And the reason why we use morality here is that if you misbehave, if there is any sort of misconduct, someone can sue you to court. Someone can sue you uh, for defaming his name or for doing something that has to do with what he does not like. He can sue you for insult in his own personality. So that is why we have to be very careful when we're dealing with such kind of issues. When we say something is non-moral, on the other hand, this one deals with intrapersonal issue that affects only you alone. In that you find out that when maybe you have something that is yours, nobody will care how much you bought it, or how much you want to use it. The way you use it is up to you. Nobody cares. So that is why you find out that when we say something is non-moral, maybe the way you maybe even conduct yourself while you are alone, nobody cares what you do to yourself. But the thing is, you have to be careful not to harm yourself to the extent that you can harm others in the process of doing so. But you have to be careful when you are also dealing with perhaps let's say that now you have a car, saying that this is your car, so you want to spoil the car. So nobody cares. You are the one that bought your car in millions of naira. So in the process of spoiling your car and you hit someone on the road, that is where moral issue comes in. So we have to be careful with the way we use our own things and in the name of our own personal freedoms. Then we have the second category, which is intrinsic and extrinsic values. Intrinsic values, this is when we appreciate things or people solely for their own sake and not what they can help us to achieve. You find out that when you are relating with individuals, you have to be careful with how you think about them. Whenever you say that you want to deal with someone, this is what we sometimes call the categorical imperative of Immanuel Kant. That is treating individuals as end in themselves and not a means to an end. You don't really care what they have or what they wear, what they drive or whatever they have. What you just care is about your own relationship. You just care about them. You don't want to care about what they have or what they don't have. That you are their friend. What they normally call a friend in need here, which is of course a friend indeed. And extrinsic value, on the other hand, this is talking about appreciating things or people only for what they can help us to achieve, not for their own sake. For instance, now I like to hold a pen simply because I can use a pen to write. I don't really care how good the pen is, or maybe how flashy it looks. or maybe I use the pen not for what it normally help us to achieve, but not for people in this kind of relationship. This this extrinsic value, when a value is said to be extrinsic, when we're dealing with things, it's very important that sometimes we use the extrinsic side of value. Else people might think us to be sick. Sick in that, for instance, think about someone who likes money not for what money can help him to achieve. You have money, you have acquired the money, yet you cannot actually uh, spend it. You see someone being hungry, being so wretched, yet the person is swimming in millions, but that person cannot spend the money simply because he wants that money for its own sake and not what money can help him to achieve to satisfy his needs and desires or whatever. So, but when it comes to people, people should actually be treated in the intrinsic sense, of course. But it's no harm to want someone just to help you to do something, just for that sake, maybe in places of work and some other areas. But when it comes to friendship, yeah, we are being friends with someone, then we have to be very careful in using the extrinsic side of relationship when it comes to friendship. But for work and other things in life, of course, it's normal. They get into the next version or the categories of value, which is subjective and objective. When we say that a value is subjective, you'll find out that that value is talking about our own personal points of view. When we place on the ones we place on people or things or activities, such as our own the way we love people, the way we care about some others, and also when we talk about beliefs. Beliefs is very personal. Someone could just say that he doesn't believe in anything, but that person could be termed as someone who is sick. Someone who is sick. However, that belief is very important that it gives us some kind of the subjective side of values is very personal and it doesn't require much of a proof or much of approval from other quarters. However, one has to be one has to be careful with the way he portrays these feelings or I mean beliefs when it comes to public opinion, because sometimes when we are being subjective, we put ourselves in harm's way. So we have to just be careful with the people around and see how we can survive. Then objective values, they said these are generally accepted values backed up by reason. Generally accepted values backed up by reason. Reason in that you find out that maybe the values we place on money, water, or even the air we breathe, all these are values that we know that they are just there. They are facts that everyone can actually attest to that. That yes, money is used for satisfaction of our own wants and also our own desires, but not all the time. You know that not all the time you can use money to get everything. Some things cannot just be bought. You just have to earn them through the way you behave, through the way you relate with others. So when you say that you want to place value on such kind of things as a lot of money, then there is going to be trouble. So this is it. This is all that we have for you. So if you have any questions, you can ask me. Thank you. Thanks for listening. Here are the references. You can look at the references. Uh, like I have like Akin Pelu, I have Doyle, I have Enkata, and I have myself among the books that you can see, and even the journals. Some of the journals I used, so you can go there and see more of them. that is Bertrand Russell, The Problems of Philosophy. So when you look at all those things, you can easily find what you are looking for. And then, as a matter of signing out, uh, this GST 212, that is module 2 of the branches and problems on the branches and problems of philosophy. God bless you all and goodbye. I hope you will not hesitate to ask me any questions through my email. As you can see it, mesolawa.edu@buk.edu.ng, or come straight to the Faculty of Educational Foundations for one-on-one discussions on the problems of this module. I wish you well, and I hope you pass your exams very well, and you people should stay good and stay put while you are in this program of ours. Bye. Assalamu alaikum. Signing out.